Welcome back to another edition of the Balas and Skene Show. That's Balas and Skene Show here at the Wolverine deck. You would think a guy with 5 Big Ten championship rings and who played in the NFL should have his name first, but you know what?
Nah.
It's a contract thing, So
Yeah. It's
plus,
alphabetical too.
right, and plus your golf game has been a little bit shoddy lately, so you're going to earn that back. So, other than those 8 pars in a row up there at Tullymore, which was really damn impressive. So, on a bad move. Yep. So he's Doug Skene, 5-time Big Ten champion, all Big Ten offensive guard at Michigan. Skene, I appreciate you being here. Let's talk a little bit about the offensive line now and where things go heading into the summer, because we didn't see a whole lot of these guys together in the spring, and that concerns me a little bit. And I understand that there are guys there that can play football. I've seen them. I watched Andrew Gentry, for example, push people around. I like him at right tackle. I really think that Josh Creed is going to be good from Northwestern. I know that Gio Obani-Ohadi can play, but the fact that they haven't played a lot together scares me a little bit. That's my first concern. Your comment on that?
It's a concern. It always is. And no matter how many reps they got in the spring together as a unit, if that's in fact what the unit's going to be, there's nothing that takes the place of full live speed practice reps. And as great as that is, that's all fine and wonderful. And you can build camaraderie and all those things. And the walkthroughs that they'll do, all that stuff too. Nothing takes the place of game speed reps together. And unfortunately, this is just part of the problem, Balas, is that until you get on the field on Saturdays and you get 60 reps together in the course of a football game, maybe 70, you just don't have that, and you just can't replicate it. So it's a legitimate concern. However, it's not a barrier for success. It doesn't mean these guys can't be good out there, and we just can't see it together. They can't feel it together until we get 2 or 3 games in.
Is this a case of, you know what, you wish you had last year's schedule where you had 3 patsies to get these guys together? I hate to say that because I love these big games, Skene, and you guys played against Florida State back in the day. You played Notre Dame every year. Who were some of the other big name teams you played? In your first year, I think it was Miami of Florida.
Yeah, right? We played Miami of Florida. There was always somebody in that
Right.
first few weeks. Oftentimes it was Notre Dame right out of the gates.
Right.
And or one year I think we played Maryland or Wake Forest either before or after. But there was always somebody on that schedule early. But it's not a bad thing, right, Balas? And I think this year, because of the way that the system is set up now, top 12 teams are going to get in the playoff. It's not a barrier to winning the Big Ten if you lose that first one. That first one. I think Big Ten champions in the future are going to have one loss. Many of them are going to. So yeah. Selfishly, sure, you'd like to open up with a new offensive line and all these new faces with Eastern Michigan and Bowling Green and maybe somebody else. It's just not the case. So they're going to have to get after it. Fresno will be an interesting one to see how they look together. And then the Texas game. And really, I don't know the Texas defensive front all that well. But I know the Texas quarterback situation and their offense. That alone will have some challenges for the defense. But that one right there, what that does sitting on the schedule right there for the guys that are going to be on the field this fall, that tightens up the intensity. That's Texas coming to town, man. They're a playoff team from a year ago. Very good program. They're on an ascension, I would say, as a program. They're getting better. They've got all kinds of great football players down there. And so that can create some urgency going all the way back to January and certainly through the summer and fall.
That's a big noon game. Are you going to be out golfing that day, or can I get you a press pass?
You know what? That's a great question, Balas. I might have to come down and sit next to you and have a hot dog in the air-conditioned, press area.
Not hot dogs anymore, man. They've got nice spreads up there. So.
Oh wow! So it's high-end stuff for you. It's got to be like caviar, lobster, and prime rib, probably.
Maybe not that, but I will say this:
I would love to do that. That might be something to do.
Yeah. In other words, he's not committing to it because if his knees is feeling good, then he's going to be playing golf. But we'll get you to another game, maybe deeper into the season.
Maybe Oregon, that USC one could be one.
Well, that's September 21st, and you'll be golfing that day too. But Oregon in November might be one that would be very all right. So we'll plan on that one. So all right, my other concerns here. I've got 2 other ones on the offensive line. Miles Hinton playing left tackle. We've talked about this a little bit. This is a guy to me who plays football because he's good at it. It's not because he loves it. That's just my impression that I get in speaking to him. However, I know that he gives his all out there, and I'm not discounting what he brings to the team. I am a little bit concerned about him at left tackle in pass blocking, and especially after seeing, last year at right tackle, he struggled a little bit out there, I thought. Your thoughts on him at left tackle?
Well, the struggles at right last year, and I know what you're talking about because we talked about some of those reps, and Miles got beat around the edge. He would kick slide over to the edge, and then he had some struggles early in the football season last year where he bent at the waist, and when offensive linemen bend at the waist, your feet tend to stop, and you get beat around, and you get a pressure, you get hit a hit after the throw or a sack on the quarterback. The mechanics of it are all the same at left. But I think last to Carson Barnhart, I think they tried at left tackle for a little while, and Carson was all right at left tackle, but his strength was right guard. In the end, that's where he was best. So, and this is going to be up to the head coach, right? Ultimately, the head coach is going to make this decision and figure out where this needs to happen as far as Miles goes. But me personally, I would like to take a guy who's a natural strong fit at a position and leave him there, let his strengths be even stronger, instead of trying to reinvent and move him to left. Now, what I don't know is all the details of how the transition may be going from right to left. Physically, Balas, you change your feet, your right foot forward and your left foot's back, your left hand goes on the ground, and you can get used to it after a while. But if you've grown up as a right tackle and you're asked to go play left, mentally you just flip everything in your head. It's the physical balance part. It's the comfort part. If you're right-handed, which I'm right-handed in pass pro, your right hand is your dominant hand for pass blocking. You want to have a strong right hand, and you use your left arm, arm on here is for bait. But if you can get that right hand into the armpit of an opposing defensive tackle who's trying to make a move, that helps. I don't know if Miles is right or left-handed, but those tiny little things make a difference. Can he make the transition? Yes. Will he do it well and as good as he could be at right? I don't know.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Did you play some left tackle? I think you started a couple games left tackle at Michigan.
Yeah, our last year I played left tackle and then I slid into left guard. That's a natural, easy move. Going from right tackle to left or left tackle to right, or anytime you change the right-handed or left-handed stance and you're moving right to left out of that stance, that's a bigger bridge to cross.
Yeah, no question. Now, center is the other question mark I have. And now part of this is unfair, right? Now you're saying, okay, they're recruiting over Greg Crippen at the position for the last couple of years. Now, when they did that, they got a Remington Award finalist who ended up winning the Remington Award, and a guy who had played so much football that if he's the missing piece to a national championship team, then you go out and get him in Drake Nugent. And he played extremely well. Now, this guy got everything he could out of his body. He was strong. He was compact. There were times it looked like he was, bracing himself against the dam, and he ended up on his ass. But overall, he did a good job. But when you got Greg Crippen in there and you got a first-year center, even if he's been there 3 or 4 years, to me, that's going to be a big deal for this offensive line.
Well, you say it's a first year. First year maybe has a starter, assuming Crippen is the guy. And whether it's Crippen or anybody else, the same challenges I talked about earlier are present for an individual, right? When you become the first guy, when they say first offense, here we go, it's a different feeling, right? You're now the guy that's expected to perform to the position. And so Crippen will be that guy. And again, it's not that he can't do it, Balas. I would say the good thing is because he's been around a long time. Imagine all the reps he's gotten in practice and in all the walkthroughs. So this should be familiar. This current offense, the familiarity is all there. You just got to go out and do it on Saturdays now. And so I don't think this is that big of a stretch. If you were telling me that our center next year was going to be a redshirt freshman or a true freshman, I would say, look out. Now we got problems. Yep. But Crippen's been in Ann Arbor for 3 or 4 years.
Yep, he has, and he's getting well coached, and he's going against some of the best defensive linemen in the country.
Yeah, that'll help. That will help.
There's no question. When you've got guys like Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, and we've heard this so many times, right? Under Bo Schembechler, you guys practiced so hard that games seemed easy in comparison. Is that fair?
No, that's a fair statement because, and I know practice is different now because NCAA limits and they can limit the amount of live football they're allowed to actually participate in during the week. But when you're practicing every day against the best, And then you go out there, you have a confidence before you've even left the locker room that I don't care who's out there, man. I've been blocking Graham and Grant all week long, and those linebackers in the middle. You step out there going, you dudes aren't any better than my guys, so
Yeah.
you're ready to go.
Yeah, understood. Okay. We're going to get to some questions here in a minute, but I do want to talk about those interior defensive linemen. When you've got one like a Mason Graham, you're in really good shape. When you got two like Grant and Graham, just tell me in your experience how that changes things for an offensive line and how valuable that is to the Michigan defense.
Well, you got to double team, or you're naturally going to double team one, right? So we play an even front. You're going to have a zero shade or somebody over the center, maybe in the guard center gap. You're going to have a 3 technique, which is somebody over the guard, maybe outside eye, and they're going to move around a little bit in there. So naturally, the center has to go one way or the other. That means somebody's going to be left on their own to block one of those dudes on their own. And from previous experience playing the guard position, mostly in the college and in the NFL, when you know you have help, maybe, as a right guard, and with the Patriots, or when I played left at Michigan, left guard, if I knew I had Steve Everett moving to my inside hip, that gave me all kinds of room to have a little more fun and be a little more liberal in my steps. And because I knew I had Everett in my inside hip. And if the role were reversed, the guy next to me knew that I had his inside hip. So when you have help, it changes the way you approach things. For me, it did. When you have a 3 technique across for you, whether it's Reggie White in Green Bay or in practice every day, it's Mason Graham. You're looking at it and you're going, okay, I got to be really good here. You have to you tighten up your steps, your thinking, because you don't have help. It changes the way you approach your target, your feet, your hands, everything else. It's a problem for any opposing offensive line who's got the one-on-one, and defensive line and defensive coordinators can set that up. So last year, Minter would do this, right? If he knew there was a weak link in an opposing offensive line, then he would set his defensive front to make sure that center had to help his other guard and left the weak link with no help or little help. And that would allow Grant or whoever to have a heyday in there. So this is the kind of the fun little X's and O's stuff you get to watch. But as an individual, one-on-one versus Reggie White, I always wanted a little help on the couple times I had to block that guy.
Yeah, I would think so. So didn't he chastise you once or kind of put you in your place?
I used foul language with him, and he told me not to use that kind of language, and I had forgotten. So I told my teammate Pat Harlow, I said, Reggie just told me not to curse at him. He goes, dude, he's an ordained minister. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
So then you ramped it up, right, to get under his skin.
I was listen, man. I grew up watching Reggie White when I was in high school. To play against him, even though it was later in his career, and it was only twice, it was a big moment in my life and my football life, Balas, to get to play against a guy like that. But in the one moment, he did make me mad because it was a clock play. We thought it was going to be a dead play, and you kind of just step inside and everybody chills. Well, he didn't chill. He clocked me right in the side of the head, and it pissed me off. So I said something to him that wasn't very nice. It was very colorful. And he said, don't ever use that language with me out here again. That's something you would never hear on a football field, let alone the things you hear on an NFL football field, certainly at that time. And it just kind of took me back. So when I went back to the huddle, I was telling all my teammates, and they're kind of laughing. And I was like, hey, he's a minister, dude. I was like, oh, I totally forgot. But
what would Steve Everett have done had he said that to him?
Everett would have told him to F off and said F you, F this, and F you that, and that wouldn't have stopped. But I don't know, I love Steve. We talk about him a lot, but But I for me, blocking against Reggie White was a big deal. So when he told me not to curse, I felt like saying yes, sir. But I didn't do that.
And there's folks is the story of how Doug Skene got soft in the NFL. And,
I never gave up a sack, Balas. I did not ever give up a sack to Reggie White.
No, but Joe Kokozo and Steve Everett, if you're listening to this, I hope you'll give him a phone call. So
Joe will send me a text.
He's Doug Skene, former All Big Ten lineman at Michigan, 5-time Big Ten champion. Joe Kokozo, by the way, has a kid who is a freshman, and I've been asking you to text him. I bet you haven't yet, because this kid's still just a freshman, but he's, I think, 6'3", 240 now, and he's starting to show up on all these lists as one of these guys to watch.
Well, I'm not going to ask him anything, Balas. I'm just going to ask him, is the kid coming to Michigan? That's it.
Yeah, that's what Bo would have done.
Yeah, that's what I'll send. I'll send him a message, and I'll say, when are you coming on your first recruiting trip, and when you come to town, please come see me.
Yeah, I want to get him on this podcast and talk about him a little bit. And in future podcasts, we're going to break down some of the spring film here too in a couple of weeks. I'm going to have some film cut up of Andrew Gentry, guys like Greg Crippen, and we're going to break that down. And I want to get your opinion on that. Kind of like an in the trenches thing that we used to do. And I think there are ways to do that. So, folks, you can watch for that. That's going to be pretty exciting. So, I do want to get to some more questions here that some of our users had for you, other than the soft question. That was mine, actually. So, your thoughts, and somebody, this is a good question. Of the last three offensive lines that Michigan has had, the three championship lines, which one, in your opinion, was the best?
Well, I'm going to have to go with last year's because they
Really?
did something that, yeah,
They did, but they didn't run the
it,
ball very well.
well, so it depends on what kind of categories you're looking for. For me, the biggest category is the biggest box that they checked. They
Right.
went and beat Alabama, who's a pretty good defensive front. They handled Washington, which was not as great of a defensive front, but they handled their business in a way that was more effective and got them to win the football games they needed to win. Boy, I look at the individuals that are on some of those offensive lines, and Oluwatimi stands out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he would be the starter of any of those three lines. He's your hands down starter at center.
Mm-hmm.
No question, right? And then we could go back in over the course of each one of those guys. So they're all very good, Balas.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very good. Last year, Ladarius at left tackle was a concern early in the season. And then remember, Balas, as that season evolved and when we got through the end, we weren't even talking about pass
Mm-hmm.
protection from the left side because Ladarius was doing a good job.
He did.
And the offensive line world, no news is good news. When
Yep.
there's no sacks or things to talk about that are negative and your quarterback is clean, that means your O-line's doing a really nice job.
Yes.
And so Ladarius was a guy who came along and did a nice job and got drafted by the Houston Texans, I believe. So he's going to go get a chance to go play some NFL football. So good for him. So many great players that have come and gone in the last few years. Zinter in there and Keegan at left. I suppose if you just looked individually by themselves,
Yeah.
you'd probably go with not this past season, the national championship, the one before that.
Right.
Probably of the three, probably the best pure offensive line together.
Yep.
But again, hey, and when we look back on it, we're going to remember the trophy that this past year's team won.
Yeah, we are. They're going to have the rings to prove it. So,
Yep.
And your rings are in a gun safe in your home. Is that correct? Not to give it away.
But, they're locked safely away, and
okay.
they're too. My knuckles are mangled. Plus, you can't when you put your golf grip together, they're just in the way. You can't wear jewelry when you're playing golf.
They should be on display, though, man. They should be on display somewhere, not in a safe.
Well, I have a picture of them on my wall over here, so that's close enough. And Balas, years ago, I remember a high school trainer of ours went to Texas A&M, and he was a trainer down at Aggie Land there, and he came back and he had his Southwest Conference championship ring from way back when in the day, and I remember he came back later, and I never saw those rings again. And I remember asking him, "Why don't you wear the rings?" He goes, "Because I have them right here. We won the championship. I don't need to show everybody. That's probably more my style. I don't need to wear big gaudy rings."
That's probably true, and I'll give you that. So now on the golf course, you get a little mouthy sometimes, but that's usually in response to people goading you, the golf Doug Skene. So, all right, this is a good question here. How does a locker room avoid a letdown after winning so much? And I get that the expectations for the position, but I go back to 1998. After the 97 team, that team came out and they were sloppy against Notre Dame. They should have won that game, and then they got absolutely destroyed by Syracuse the following week. How do you avoid getting fat and happy?
Well, I think that's that answer is best provided by the individuals in the individual lockers and individual accountability within the position groups. So it's going to be the leaders in each one of those positional rooms to hold each other accountable. Having gone through the last few years of evolution and last year's team winning it all, everybody in these rooms is going to have been there and done that and seen it and lived it. And say, they know what the intensity is, the chase, right? To get to the top of the mountain. To stay at the top is a different challenge. So in the defensive line room, I would expect that Mason Graham is not going to let anybody cut a corner or two in any kind of preparation, mentally or physically. The same thing goes in that offensive line room. Now, who is the individual going to be that's going to point each other out and say, not good enough, let's go, or follow me? Every group in the room or every group in the building has to have 1, 2, or 3 of those guys that maintain the standard to not allow other people that may want to put it a little bit on autopilot because, hey, we're Michigan and you're not. That mentality to get you beat really fast. And so it's going to be upon the leaders in the room, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a pronounced or declared someone with the C on the jersey, right? It can be anyone in the room doing their own style of leadership to make sure that no one slips. And that's the best you can do.
Yep, understood. Michigan Storm says, what do you believe is the minimum amount of points that Michigan needs to score in the games versus Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State, assuming track meets aren't realistic and the defense can win Michigan any game? I'm thinking 20 to 24 against Texas. Oregon, same thing. Oregon's going to be tough, man. I think Oregon's the toughest game on the schedule. I think Ohio State, I don't think Ohio State has the same quarterback. I think they have a better defense, but I'm looking at some lower scoring games here if Michigan's going to win them.
I would say 24 to 27. I still think in college football today, that number is certainly higher than it was decades ago. This defense is going to have to be as good as we think it can be. But this offense is not going to be able to win a ton of games if we stay below the 20 mark, unless the defense is off the chain really good.
Right. And I'll go back to last year, Skene, not to interrupt you, but if you look at Washington, held them to 13 points. You look at Ohio State, held them to 20, the best offenses that they played. Yep. Right. So Alabama, 20. So
let's settle. Let's just settle and say a number of 24. We got to get to at least 24 to be.
And here's the thing,
there.
though, with that too, is that you're talking about ball control too. That defense, that offense, kept the ball for good amounts of time in those games. You can't be going 3 and out and 3 and out and 3 and out and expecting to keep explosive offenses off the field.
No, you cannot. This is where the value of 46 and 47G and all the variations off of it keep your defense happy and healthy. Yep. Watching football, you want your defense watching as much football as possible from the sideline,
right?
And letting them rest and have fun and be on the ready. But 3 and outs, especially early in the year, Balas, when it's hot in Ann Arbor and it's hot wherever you end up playing, you cannot continue to put the guys out there. 3 and outs are bad. Turnovers are even worse if you put them back end. And I know the defensive guys get excited about sudden change. You get out there and prove the world that they can do it, but it's not something you want to do all that often.
Right. Understood. Let's take another question here. Being an offensive lineman, when your name normally only gets mentioned when you do something wrong, did you ever feel like you had a thankless job, or was there plenty of appreciation behind the scenes from coaches and teammates to let you know that you were appreciated?
No, it was for us, and I would go all the way back to when we were freshmen. It's a great question. When we were on the demo team, the scout team as freshmen, we got a lot of praise at the end of that season, middle of the end of the season, because our freshman demonstration units, we were historically, by the time we were seniors for sure, many of the coaches that were there would say to us, that was the best scout team we've ever had. And that's why we went and did so well that year, right? And then you get on the field, you work your way up and you're on the field during the film breakdowns. And when the pocket is clean or there's running lanes for your backs to get through, there's a lot of recognition and a lot of thanks to the offensive line during the week from your teammates, the guys that are in the huddle with you, your quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, et cetera. And even amongst the teammates, right? If I'm in a help position with the center or the left tackle, and maybe they had somebody get on a hip and I stood right in there to stop that, then we would thank each other. So there was no shortage of gratitude in the room. And then when you did something galactically wrong, you heard about that too. Yeah. You got exposed. So, there was this air of, you just never wanted to be the guy that had the red dot on you with the laser pointer there, having to explain, what you're doing here. And the worst, Balas, the worst, and I'm sure it's the same today. The worst thing an offensive lineman can do, and it's probably the same for all position groups, is go out there and just make a dumb mental mistake and get somebody killed. Yeah. And so, because mental mistakes don't require special talent, it's just a matter of focus right here. So if you go out there and you have a bad MA and it causes a tackle for loss, a hit on your quarterback, or a sack, that was the worst. And that's when either Jerry Hanlon or Les Miles would put the laser on me and say, explain what you are doing here. And you have to explain it to your whole team in front of everybody. It's pretty humiliating. And so you say to yourself, I never want to do that again. So you don't.
Yeah, understood. I wonder how Coach Hanlon's doing. We need to check up on him and make sure he's doing okay. Love that little Irishman. So,
Yeah.
Was the 2023 Ohio State win the biggest rivalry win ever, considering all the attacks on the program and what it led to?
Oh, hey, listen, it was right. Now, historians may say otherwise. Of course, a lot of the old school Michigan fans are going to say 1969 for good reasons.
Yep.
And there's a lot of them in between there. But I'd have to say it was right up there in the top 3 of all-time wins over Ohio State. And for so many reasons, right? Ohio State had gone all in. No, you guys are cheaters, and we're going to have you do this, and we got you there. And they really felt like they were going to waltz in here and take care of things. And so I can tell you, I would say just sitting here today in the modern era, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I say modern era in let's just say from 1980 on.
Yeah.
Because for anybody that's watching or listening, the state of Ohio has been in a catatonic state since we beat them, and we went on to win it. My Buckeye coworkers that I work with here, Balas, with my company I work with, casual observers of college football, Ohio doesn't know what to do with the fact that we are the reigning national champions. We've clearly owned them. The pressure, I can only imagine the pressure on Ryan Day.
Yeah.
And the expectations on that guy, because if he does another one, they'll have him gone before the buses leave the parking lot. That's how bad it is.
Yeah.
And so it's win everything or you're gone mentality down there. But I kind of like that question. I think the answer is probably yes. That was the biggest one because it was a nail in the coffin of the modern era of Ohio State football. And we kind of own you right now.
Yeah, and he put everything into that game when he went on a local radio or TV station and he said, "You know what? Now that we know that was going on the last 2 years, even though they knew that Michigan might have their signs the previous year, and they admitted that they changed them up, so Michigan beat them fair and square." He basically put everything on him, and you could see it in his body language as he was walking off the field that he knew, right, that okay, my plan failed, and now I'm really, really on the hot seat. But there are 4 games that come to mind, 4 Ohio State games, and of course, all of them are really big. But if you look at 1969, the one that really changed the trajectory of the rivalry and made it a rivalry again with Bo Schembechler, as Woody Hayes once told him, "You will never win a bigger game than that," and he said he was probably right when he said that in his book. 1997, can't be undefeated if you don't beat Ohio State. That's right up there. 2021 is huge to me because that also got things back. It's like 1969 all over again, right? Now you're back and you are beating these guys again, and you've made it a rivalry again. And then last year, of course, you had to have that one to win the championship. Everything that went into it was beautiful.
So the Hutch game, Hutch and I call it the Hutch game, right? When he was just terrorizing.
Yes, he was.
You kind of felt like that one was coming, like it was finally our time. There was a little expectation in there. And then the year after down in Columbus, I remember myself going, I don't know, man. We haven't won down there in a generation. And we went down there and put a dagger in them and just sucked the life out of that stadium with the big runs and the big plays and everything. And our quarterback is playing like an offensive lineman. And there's a lot of grit being displayed. That freaked out Buckeye Nation. That absolutely freaked them out. Yeah. And then this last year was, again, like you just said, can't possibly happen 3 years in a row. We're Ohio State and you're not. This cute little gimmick thing that Michigan's got going on comes to an end this year. Yeah. And the players and their coaches and the whole Ohio State community was banking on this fact. And nope. And the reality is, Balas, it wasn't because they didn't have the effort or the intensity. They certainly do, and they always will. But in the end, they just didn't have a great quarterback. Their offensive line was kind of average. Mm-hmm. And their defensive line was kind of average, and that's why they got their asses beat. That's the football of it. And until that changes, as long as we have a stronger O-line, D-line, and a better quarterback, we will win most of these games.
Yeah, and I'm not sure they have the better quarterback, but I like Michigan's line play, frankly, especially the defensive line. We'll see. I think the offensive line will be clicking then. If we get to the third quarter of that game and it's a barn burner, you're going to see some Some puckering. Let's just put it that way. Some puckering.
Some
right?
dudes pulling the necktie down. It's
there's nothing quite like that feeling in that stadium, and I know that you've experienced it too. It's a lot of fun. So
if Michigan goes down to Columbus this year and beats Ohio State, Ryan Day will be fired within 24 hours.
That's fantastic. Well, here's hoping. Even if they're undefeated going into that game?
Even if they're undefeated.
Okay.
I'm telling you right now.
Put that down. All right. B-Block, he has a good question here. Football philosophy. Prompted by Michigan signing 4 defensive backs, is it better to have 2 really good safeties, for example, that you hope can play all the snaps, or is it better to have 4 safeties that are good, but are going to split snaps among them? Now, I'll say this. You've got 2 guys that have played a ton of football in Makari Page and Quentin Johnson that I wouldn't trade that, right? These guys are going to be the ones that probably play the majority of the snaps. You've got a guy, Jaden Mangum, coming in from Michigan State. You've got a guy, Wesley Walker, coming in from Tennessee. Now, they did bring somebody in from a smaller school to compete with him at Tennessee, so it's not like he was this all SEC safety, everything else. So to me, I want 4 guys like we saw last year on the defensive line when the guys are rotating out, where you can leave a Derek Moore and a Josiah Stewart out there and not be concerned about it, even when Braden McGregor and Jalen Harrell aren't on the field, because you have that confidence and you've split the reps so that all these guys are fresh. That's where I am with this.
I agree with you. I'd take 4 good versus 2 great.
Right.
I want the depth because football happens, injuries happen, things just happen, and so it's a good question. It's a fair question, but generally speaking, I want depth everywhere. Because when you have that, you're pushing, right? If you got 2 superstars back there, not all the time, certainly not, saying anything negative about the guys in the locker room now, but you got 2 superstars back there. The other guys are going, well, I guess we got to wait, right? I guess we just got to wait until we get on the field. But if you got 4 guys that are rotating, now you got more engagement in the meetings, practices, game prep, everything, because the expectation is I'm playing. I'm in this rotation. And that's what this defense is all about. There isn't really 11 starters. There's probably about 16 or 18.
Yeah. Yep. And there's still some depth there, which is good. Would like a little bit more depth at linebacker, but we'll talk about that down the road. A couple more questions here before I let you go and get to the golf course here, Skene, or to your real job. Okay. Mr. Shark FB is a coach and one of the better contributors on this board. Great question here. If Orji ends up being the guy, there's a good chance Michigan's at least somewhat limited throwing the football. Do you think they'll add some run concepts where Orji has a keep option on the interior? Specifically asking about concepts like power read, Q counter bash, and Q ISO. There were times they let JJ do it, he notes. The calls were understandably zone read, arc read, and a rare Q pin and pull. And what I wrote yesterday was, do you tailor your quarterback to an offense that maybe he isn't really suited for? And we kind of saw that with Denard Robinson under Brady Hoke. Or do you go and start looking at some of the Rich Rod concepts and things like that and put him in a position where he might be better off succeeding?
If I'm Sharon Moore, I'm going with the high school coach who's got this question, and absolutely, I am tailoring this offense to put Orji into a position of strength. Big, strong guy, not afraid to put a shoulder down. We've seen that out of him on the football field on Saturdays. And so if you got to create some different mismatches with him and allow him to do some more reads off of different points in your defensive front, I'm all for it. And I would absolutely do that. I think that they will. The question is, will Sharon do it? It seems to me that this offensive staff, now led by Sharon, has that kind of tendency, right? We're going to go to what our strengths are. They knew they had an NFL guy in JJ last year, right? So do we really need him keeping the ball that much and putting a shoulder down through the middle as much as maybe you would with Orji? No, we didn't need to, because JJ could do other things. And so I think it's only smart coaching that if you've got an NFL quarterback, let him be an NFL quarterback, and that more styled. And then you can do options off of that with some of the things we saw with JJ, even though he's got the speed to do it. And maybe if you don't have a super strong passing NFL type guy back there, but he's really good in other areas, you have to do that. You're almost obligated to do that. Do that.
Yep. As an offensive lineman, finally, Sammy Cabo, what's the biggest adjustment to be made with a new QB, especially going from one like JJ to a guy with less experience like Alex Orji, if it does turn out to be him?
Yeah. So typically speaking, new quarterbacks tend to want to bail out of pockets really fast, and specifically on the edge, your tackles. the key for any great quarterback who has to sit in there, whether it's off a play action or a straight drop back, 3 or 5 step, whatever it is, you got to trust that pocket. And what can frustrate offensive lines really fast is when guys leave the pocket, you got your eyes downfield, and all of a sudden they're worried about protection and they're looking around. And it's one of the great things about the Michigan helmet. When you're watching football, watch the stripes on the top of the helmet from your quarterback. And you can just see if he's looking around downfield, he's got his reads over here, he's looking at this half of the football field or whatever he's doing. But if in a pass situation, you see him doing this and the head goes down and he's looking, that means he's freaking out about protection. One of the biggest challenges for a quarterback is to go through the growth pains with your offensive line. Your tackles need to be confident that your quarterback's going to stick in there. And so that's one of the bigger challenges. The rest of the stuff is just getting used to his voice, his cadence, the language, the body language in the huddle there. And so, and those things come along fast, but the football itself, one of the things that can create a kind of a strife between O-lines and quarterbacks is the trust, especially in passing downs when everybody knows we're going to throw the football. I got you. I'll take care of you. So it just takes a little time to get there.
Yep, understood. He's Doug Skene, 5-time Big Ten champion. That's why we pay him the medium bucks, folks. Great stuff. We appreciate that. And we will do this in a couple of weeks. I'm going to get some clips ready of some of these guys from the spring. I want you to break them down for us. And people miss that segment, are in the trenches. I know that. We've been working on that. So we're going to at least try getting back towards that here in our next couple of podcasts. Plus, we're going to get Joe Kokozo on here. And we're going to encourage guys like Kokozo and Doug Skene to continue to breed and provide us with big linemen and guys that can play football. Because I'll tell you what, these sons of former players are killing it here.
Well, there's been many over the years,
yeah.
Right? And by the way, I just sent this text message to Joe. And I just said, "Your kid coming to Michigan?"
Yeah,
and that's all I said to him. We'll see if he responds here. There's been a lot of legacy players that have come through that have been really, really good. And so, we all dream, I think, as parents to do that. Probably none more than Chris Hutchinson right now. We're all very proud of Aiden and what he's done, obviously, in his time in Michigan. And that legend's just going to continue to grow the more success we have. And we watch him play for the Lions. But it's fun to watch. But it's not the only thing. Obviously, there's Michigan men are not born in the blue navy blue blazer. They are developed when you arrive in Ann Arbor, Balas. Yep. That's how you become one.
Understood. Doug Skene, thanks for your time, and appreciate our producer, Megan. Great stuff as always. So we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Go Blue.